Hey everyone, we had our live the other day and we were talking about slipped discs, and it's brought to my attention that some of those videos may not have saved properly and there may have been an issue with the microphone. So today we're not going to be using any microphone, just going to be using the phone itself, and again going to be going through what a slipped disc is, how this can be treated, and which kind of cases it may be best to see maybe a medical doctor or a chiropractor. So the first thing to want to establish is what is the disc. So during the different parts of the spine we have all of these different bones which you may have seen before. And this is something that we see in the neck, we see in the mid back, and we see in the low back. And we're looking, we have all these bones, and then in between each one we have this bit here, which you can see looks a little bit grey, and this is the disc. Now the purpose of the disc is to keep the bones apart. It acts as a shock absorber, meaning that the bones are not going to be touching, and if you have any falls, accidents, bending movements, it's going to be taking all of those shocks. It's keeping it as a spacer, so it means that the gap at the back, this is where the nerve, as we can see here, where this nerve is coming out to make sure that its space is as big as possible. And the disc is also allowing for movement, for flexibility, and for bending by having its essentially more flexible aspect to it. One of the things that the disc will do, as we can see in this big model here, is it will change shape as you move in different directions. So you're going left, going right, going forward, going backward, it will change shape. And the way it does this is because inside of this disc is liquid. The outside is a kind of more of a rubbery shell, I guess you could say, but inside there's liquid. So overall, it's kind of like, say, a water balloon with a harder outer shell. As you move in certain directions, that water will move in certain directions so that we can move as we want to and as we need to. Now, what can happen is there can be what's called a slip disc, and this can happen in different parts of the body. Most commonly, it would happen in the neck or the low back, and today we're going to be focusing more on the low back. It can happen potentially in the middle of the spine, however, it's generally more likely in the top of the neck and the low back because this is where there's the most mobility and the most movement. Now, if there is this kind of problem, there are different levels of what we call a slip disc. There could be a bulge, which is again a small part coming out. There could be a herniation, which is where more is coming out, or it could be even full-blown what we call sequestration, which is where the actual liquid is starting to leak out. But generally that's a much more extreme case. For the majority of people, it's going to be more likely to be a bulge or to be a herniation. Now, when this happens in the low back, this can then start to affect those muscles around the area as your body naturally starts to tense up to try and essentially fix the problem. And it also may start to put pressure on those nerves as they're exiting the different parts. As we talked about, we have these nerves and they're exiting from these holes at the sides. However, if we start to have a bulge, it can start to push out and push more onto that nerve, irritating it and stopping it from working properly. The nerves, especially in your low back, are the ones that send information to your low back, to your legs, to your bladder, to your sex organs, all the way down to your toes as well. So if there's irritation on those nerves, it prevents them from working properly. It prevents them from sending the right healing messages that are coming from the brain. And it means it can also stimulate other problems such as symptoms. These symptoms could include pain, tingling, numbness, even weakness or cramps in the low back or down the legs as well. Some people may commonly call this sciatica. And this would actually be pretty much exactly the same thing. Sciatica is just more broad term, talking more about pain in the leg rather than the actual slip disc itself. Now, in terms of the cause can be widespread, and the cause can be from two generally main causes. So usually it can be from some sort of injury. This could be an accident, a fall, it could be a sports injury, or the other way it can happen is from repetitive movements. Now these repetitive movements, they could either be, say, from small things like, say, bending, picking things up, or it can be, when I talk about repetitive movements, also, say, from standing for long periods of time, or bad posture, or for sitting for long periods of time. So we have these two different ways that things can happen. It can either be by some sort of injury, or it can be from some sort of repetitive movement. Generally, if it's something where it's an injury, it's probably better to see a medical doctor first, just to get everything checked out, make sure there's not any fractures, no real damage. The other thing we can do as well, sorry about that, we had one of our patients coming back in. So as I was talking about, there's two different ways it can happen. It can either be where there's been some sort of injury, especially if there's been some sort of accident. This is where it's best to see a medical doctor, maybe getting x-rays or CT scans, or just checking that there's been no real long-lasting damage. But the other way that it can happen is it can be from these repetitive movements. Now again, if you're doing some repetitive movements, it makes sense it may be directly a problem in the lower back. However, if it comes to something really, really small, like say, you turn and you go to pick up a cup of coffee, maybe you don't even have very bad posture at the time. It can actually be where there's a problem in the upper part of the neck, and this is then affecting the balance all the way through. One way to think of the upper neck is it's like a foundation for the rest of your nerve system and your spine. The foundation of your house is what keeps everything upright and everything balanced. If the foundation is off, it means that your floors, your walls, your ceilings, everything can start to become crooked over time. And the same thing can happen with your body, except for us, we're kind of upside down because the brain is at the top. So if there's a change in the foundation here, it means you may have a head tilt, which may lead to a change in the angle of the shoulders to try and compensate, which may start to affect the shape of the mid-spine, affecting the shape of the lower spine, even affecting the hips and making them uneven as well. Now, if there is this kind of problem, it means that you have an imbalance already spreading throughout the body. So when you do something fairly innocuous, like picking up a cup of coffee, suddenly then it's going to trigger more of an imbalance further down the spine as well. So it can be that there's actually a problem at the top part of the neck, and that may be what is one of the contributing factors to what's happening in the lower back, as well as some of those repetitive movements. In these kind of cases, it's usually best to see a chiropractor, especially one that focuses more on what's happening in the neck, so they can really get to the core of what's happening and deal with that foundational aspect. So again, if there is some sort of injury, generally it's better to see a medical doctor to make sure everything is okay and there's no lasting damage. However, if it is something more from a repetitive movement or from a smaller movement, it would generally be good to see a chiropractor instead. That's everything for today. Again, if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments, or you can give us a call at 8438-9550 or email help@vitalitychiropracticcenters.com. Next week we're going into some other topics as well, and then coming into the future, that's where we'll talk about the other type of slip disc, which is more in the neck. All right, speak to you soon. Bye-bye.